insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
How they think they can get away with it, I don't know, when the evidence from the camera is so clear.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques.
This is connected to a bank account and a second mobile phone number.
And a newly formed dedicated police unit.
Police, get back!
They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers, cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act, and claimed and shamed. Today, a whiplash claimant with an outlandish story.
She was arguing that she was in two places at once.
IFED raids a suspected fraud gang.
Open the door, it's going to get smashed in!
And the Lancashire Police leave nothing to doubt.
You will be caught, and you will be punished, and your assets will be stripped from you.
Gloucester. Not a place you'd associate with violent gang crime. But on the 11th of August 2007, 38-year-old local David Russell was found staggering near his home, covered in blood and with 7 nails buried in his body. He'd been the victim of a violent and unprovoked attack.
He spun me around, grabbed hold of my bottom of my T-shirt with one hand and then pushed what I now know to be this orange nail gun into my chest.
2 of the nails were buried in David Russell's forearm. More worryingly, another 5 had been pumped into his chest. 1 lodged just an inch from his heart. The attackers had not been found. DC Dean Morse was given the job of catching them.
Mr. Russell's allegation obviously sent, concern through the community. The last thing you want is reports of a gang going around with a nail gun and basically attacking people and obviously shooting them with nails.
From his hospital bed, David Russell expressed the fears held by the local community.
You can pick on a 30-odd-year-old bloke, they're going to pick on anybody, sort of thing, so...
His plea was to have a dramatic effect on the investigation. It attracted the attention of an old boss who had some interesting information about Mr. Russell for the police.
On his CV, when he was employed by the company, that he said that he had spent 18 years in the Royal Marines, that he had done 3 tours of duty in Northern Ireland, and that he had also served in the Gulf War.
Some of which were complete lies. So DC Morse did some research on the victim.
This then led me on to making inquiries with the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board. Criminal Injuries basically told me that he had reported a crime in Avon and Somerset in 2004.
And to his astonishment, DC Morse found that in that incident, David was the victim of an unmotivated attack. The weapon, a nail gun. The number of nails removed from his body, 7. On that occasion, his insurer paid out £4,400.
When you suddenly have a previous allegation, exactly the same number of nails, with a method of doing it, basically, that is exactly the same, you know that you've got somebody there who is either the unluckiest man in Britain or is a consummate liar. We went to arrest Mr. Russell, and he broke down fairly quickly in an interview and fully admitted that he had made up both the stories in Gloucester and down in Bristol.
David Russell appeared at Gloucester Crown Court. Pleading guilty, he was sentenced to 2.5 years imprisonment for perverting the course of justice.
He was very remorseful as to his actions, and he has fully regretted what's taken place.
The IFB sends out a warning to repeat offenders.
We now have all the tools at our disposal to be able to investigate and prosecute.
And a bus company faces a stubborn fraudster.
She, at great expense of the public purse, decided that she was going to plead not guilty.
In the fight against the growing problem of insurance fraud, an elite police squad have come together to form IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
Insurance fraudsters are hurting us in our pockets. That's not right. IFED have been set up to combat that problem, and we will do so by making arrests all over the country.
This dedicated team works tirelessly to bang up the crooks and con men, getting rich off other people's money.
Police, get back!
If you commit insurance fraud, there's every chance that IFED are going to come knocking on your door and bringing you to justice.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
By April 2012, after only 6 months of operating, it had already busted 80 fraudsters, adding up to £12 million of fraud under investigation.
Insurance fraud is seen at the moment as an easy touch. IFED are setting out to stop that and make these organised crime groups think again.
It's 5:40 a.m. and IFED is executing a multi-location raid on the members of a suspected fraudulent accident management company. These types of bogus outfits work by taking your car and making it look as though it's been in a crash with a second vehicle. They will then pay you to take responsibility for the bogus crash, leaving them to make a large claim for the damage to the second vehicle against your insurance company. IFED has one team preparing to raid a place of business and another at a residential address.
Right.
The team suspects that inside this flat lives a member who may have been involved in the fraudulent activity.
Open the door, it's going to get smashed in! Good lad.
Your safety in mind at the moment, so we do some searching in this flat. I'm just going to place some handcuffs on you, okay? Just put your hand out for me,
Assisting IFED on the raid is the Tactical Aid Unit. Having gained entry to the flat, DS Mark Forster briefs them on the case.
He's introduced various people to this accident management company, provided names, addresses for claimants, basically.
Yeah.
So any documentation in relation to names, addresses, written on scrap bits of paper. We know that the accidents that have been fraudulently submitted to the insurance companies involve high-value vehicles, and a lot of money is being made by credit hire. In other words, replacement vehicles, some of which they're charging the insurance companies £300 a day for, and these are vehicles that they've had for up to 18 months. Lovely job.
Even before the team starts the search for fraudulent documents, they come across some cannabis.
Is that just all paraphernalia in there?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Is that...
No, but they're going to bag up and take with them then.
Oh, they found?
Caution, yeah.
Well, what small amount is it?
Yeah, well, an eighth, something.
IFED came here for evidence of fraudulent activity. In one of the bedrooms, a significant find is made.
Number of SIM cards here. Somewhere up to, I don't know, about a dozen or so SIM cards, another 3 there. Well, as I say, it's a common theme for criminals to use more than one mobile phone and certainly more than one sort of SIM card. It sort of assists to cover their tracks, etc., assists with their criminality, and basically it makes it a lot more difficult for us to detect who they're contacting, who's contacting them, etc.
DS Forster is called back to the lounge by one of his officers, tasked with analysing paperwork.
Suffered a fall from a ladder in 2005, sustained a heel fracture. He had an MRI in 2007, revealed protrusion.
He probably just keeps trying to claim, doesn't he? And he's got appeals with...
It's documentation that relates to a personal injury claim. We're just looking to see whether it may form part of a personal injury claim that may be fraudulent, or whether it is a legitimate claim.
The raid location has already filled a lot of evidence bags. DS Forster suspects he has found a piece of criminal research.
It's a printed picture from Google Maps Street View. This is the sort of thing that we do come across quite often with people who are involved in staged or contrived accident claims.
The printout contains a detailed description of the crash, including dates, times and positioning of the cars.
So, and underneath that it says weather, damp, wet. And then it says driver male, 2 males, which are presumably passengers or other occupants in that vehicle.
The suspect is arrested and the search for evidence is over. This half of the double raid is complete. The second IFED team executes the next phase of the raid.
You're under arrest, suspicion of conspiracy to defraud.
The UK is the whiplash capital of Europe. Nearly 1,200 whiplash claims are made on our roads every day. The cost to the NHS of treating whiplash has been estimated at £8 million a year. It's December 2008, and the W15 bus is winding its way through the busy streets of Walthamstow, north-east London.
Our driver was driving along a quite narrow and busy suburban road in London. There were cars parked on both sides. It's quite difficult for him to get through.
Unfortunately, an error of judgment from the driver resulted in the bus scraping a parked car. The owner of the damaged car, Patricia Walker, confronted the driver about the scrape.
Patricia Walker claimed that she had been sitting in the car with her husband, that the bus had hit the car and that she'd suffered injuries. She said that she suffered injuries to her neck and that she was still struggling with the symptoms 4 or 5 months later.
It was an unfortunate incident, and Arriva was going to accept full responsibility for the collision and the whiplash suffered by Mrs. Walker. That was until the bus driver's report was submitted.
Our driver had done a good job in completing the report form, which he has to complete after every incident, and he'd made it quite clear that there was only one person in the vehicle which he had hit.
Before any kind of payout could be arranged, this difference of opinion had to be sorted. So Arriva analysed the bus's onboard CCTV footage.
Our buses are fitted with high-definition CCTV cameras, forward-facing, rear-facing, internal cameras.
And when they analysed the footage, the bus company didn't like what they saw. Mrs. Walker wasn't in the car at the time of the collision. She was, in fact, crossing the road behind the bus. The footage shows her knocking on the bus's back window after witnessing the crash.
Unfortunately for Patricia Walker, it showed her not actually inside the vehicle as she claimed in her claim form. And when the bus actually passed her, Patricia Walker then walks behind the bus. You then see her on the footage actually looking down the side of the bus at the damage to her vehicle and then entering the bus and talking to the bus driver.
A fair cop, surely, but not in Patricia's eyes.
When we showed Patricia Walker the footage, she looked shocked, and her basic answer was quite simply, "I know how it looks, officer. That is me on the footage. I cannot explain it, but I was inside the vehicle at the time of the collision." So effectively, she was arguing that she was in two places at once.
The police and we thought that she would plead guilty and go away quietly with whichever sentence the court thought appropriate. But no, she, at great expense to the public purse, decided that she was going to plead not guilty. Mrs. Walker seemed to think that the jury might believe that she could be in two places at once. Not surprisingly, the jury did not believe her.
Patricia Walker was charged with fraud by false representation. The jury found her guilty, and on the 27th of May 2011, she was sentenced to 12 months community service and a 3-month curfew.
I think she just made a wrong decision on this occasion, and why she pleaded not guilty, I have no idea, but I think she's regretted that decision. I think she was also very lucky not to go to prison.
For us, CCTV cameras are worth their weight in gold. We want a clear message of deterrence to go out to people that if you are involved in an accident with a Arriva bus and it's our fault and you are genuinely injured, then we want to pay you fairly and quickly. But if you're not injured and you're out to make a quick buck, then we'll do all we can to take criminal action against you.
Meet Munsif Dad and his two sons Amir and Nadeem. It's November 2005, and they've just submitted a £1,430 claim for repairs to the storm-damaged roof of a terraced property they own in their hometown of Nelson, Lancashire. That same month, the Dad family has also submitted a second claim for storm damage to the roof of a second property they own nearby. The Dads received payouts from the insurance company for both claims. 7 months later, in June 2006, in what seems to be an incredible stroke of bad luck, one of the houses again suffers storm damage to the roof. As before, the Dads submit a claim for the damage and wait for the money to come in. But 1 170 miles away in London, something was happening that would stop the dads from receiving a penny from their insurers. The formation of the Insurance Fraud Bureau, the IFB. The IFB was set up to combat organised insurance crime in the UK. By persuading a previously secretive insurance industry to share information, the IFB has become a very powerful weapon in the fight against insurance fraud. The IFB had barely reached its first birthday when they were approached by an insurer with suspicions about a number of claims coming from the small town of Nelson. Among them were the dads' claims for storm-damaged roofs.
The insurer first became suspicious with the claims in Operation Flash because a number of the cases were close to policy inceptions and the circumstances of the claims were remarkably similar from one to another.
In order to learn more about Mr. Dad, the IFB put his details through their specialist software. The software has access to information from nearly every insurer in the country. Armed with just the name and address of a single policyholder, the software can create a map of that individual's insurance agreements. It's a very quick process.
I could start by showing you what a genuine person in our system might look like.
The average policyholder would have a simple map with just a few connections, raising no suspicion from the IFB.
Here's an example of one of the properties in Operation Flash. This property in the middle was an address that was owned by Amir Dad. In less than 2 years, he submitted 9 claims, and each of these icons highlighted in red represents a claim against one of the insurance companies that we worked with.
The software indicated that Mr. Dad was suspiciously well insured, so the IFB took the case back up to Lancashire to get extra help. Leading the investigation for the Lancashire Police was DI Dave Groombridge. He and his team recognised a pattern in the claims being made by the dads.
I think the offenders in this case were clever in keeping their individual claims down to a minimum, so it was volume claims which netted a huge amount of money collectively rather than just 1 or 2 small big claims.
DI Dave Groombridge and his team unearthed a total of £104,000 worth of claims made by the dads. The Lancashire team also discovered the dads had not restricted their scamming to just home insurance.
There was a number of claims which were quite outlandish, principally dogs that didn't exist, never had existed. After 2 or 3 premium payments, these dogs were miraculously lost or stolen. There was also large amounts of jewellery, apparently stolen in burglaries, which indeed later turned up in the possession of the claimants. Complete false claim.
After 2 years of investigating, the IFB and Lancashire Police had collected indisputable evidence of fraudulent activity by the dads. The most astonishing information being the schedule of works carried out on the dads' 2 properties. 2004, storm-damaged roof at house number 1. September 2005, rear wall damaged by vehicle at house number 2. October 2005, wall damaged at house number 1. November 2005, roof damaged at house number 1 and 2. March 2006, wall damaged at house 1. April 2006, roof damaged at house 1. May 2006, wall damaged at house 1. June 2006, wall damaged at house 1 and 2. June 2006, roof damaged at house 2. The Lancashire Police were ready to strike.
The main conspirators, the main people behind this scam, were arrested in September 2009 by Lancashire Police. They executed warrants at a number of addresses, supported by staff from the IFB.
A judge at Preston Crown Court called it a clever and determined fraud. Mr. Munsif Dad was handed a suspended 9-month prison sentence. His sons Nadeem and Amir were each in prison for 15 months.
I think their criminal activities dominated their lives, and the vast majority of the trappings of their wealth had come about through their criminal behaviour. We pay increased insurance premiums to cover the losses incurred by the companies through this sort of fraud. But times are changing, and the police are prepared to work with other agencies, and collectively we will pursue these people and be under no misapprehension. You will be caught, and you will be punished, and your assets will be stripped from you.
Today, IFED is executing raids on a suspected motor fraud gang.
Open the door, it's going to get smashed in!
Alongside the arrest of a suspect earlier, the second IFED team continues to search 2 further properties. A large search is planned at a business address where they hope to secure more evidence. First, IFED heads to the home of another suspect.
From the City of London Police. We're from the police.
Yeah?
Yeah. Can we come in, please?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You're under arrest, okay, on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud.
For what?
You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention or question something which you later on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The suspect works for the accident management company, and they believe is involved in the alleged fraudulent activity there. DC Declan Mallow searches the flat for evidence of fraud.
Shouldn't be too long. Once you finish searching, we'll then take you to the custody suite, and then at some point later on today, you'll be interviewed.
This is the lady's main bedroom. The other bedroom's been searched and nothing's been found, so this is the last room to do in the flat.
DC Mallow takes some paperwork for further investigation. With a second suspect arrested, IFED has just one more location to raid.
Just had news from DS Finnegan that we've got access to another premises, so we're just waiting for further update from him to see if he needs additional resources there when we've finished here.
With a 1,000 square metre business to search, the IFED team based here will need plenty of help. Leading the search is DS Tom Finnegan, who's just been made aware of the recent arrests.
We intend to carry out a search of her office very shortly. As I said, there are other locked offices in there that are the offices of the directors. We intend to effect entry to those offices shortly, and we'll see what comes out of that search.
There's plenty of security protecting this workplace, but IFED is used to such measures and has come armed with a crowbar and a battering ram. It's not just about brute force, though. Today, DS Finnegan's IFED unit is comprised of specialist investigators brought in anticipation of complex evidence.
My colleague here is specially trained to interrogate computers, laptops, anything of digital, electronic nature. We have dedicated financial investigators, and this gentleman is one of those investigators, so he's here specifically to have a look at the financial documents in relation to the company.
Looking at an intimidating workload, DS Finnegan calls in the help of DC Mallow and DI Rogers.
Right, the sort of things that we'll be looking for are these sorts of files, which say referrals, and within those we'd expect to find documentation of people that have allegedly been involved in accidents and the subsequent claims that have then transpired from those accidents. Just to do
Every scrap of evidence is needed if the IFED team is to get a conviction, and it's mounting up.
This is an office which we're definitely interested in searching. We'd expect to see whiteboards on the wall, sort of indicating the work that they're currently involved in, and we would think that these are the names likely of people involved in staged accidents that haven't occurred.
The financial investigator makes a discovery.
What he's gone through so far, we can see large sums of money going through their business account, which might be all legitimate, but at this stage it's certainly of interest to us.
DS Finnegan's IT specialist is extracting large amounts of potential evidence from the computers.
What my colleague's doing at this time is taking an image, a forensic image of that server, which we can use at a later date, examine it for any evidence that might be on it, and obviously then it can be prepared as an exhibit for the case. Okay.
in, IFED spends over 50 man-hours extracting, deciphering and bagging evidence on site. It's been a successful raid. IFED has enough evidence to fill a van, making DS Finnegan a happy man.
We believe this particular accident claim company has been responsible for putting a large number of fraudulent claims forward to the insurance industries. That, of course, when they turn out to be fraudulent and the insurance industry spend that money or pay that money out, results in you and I and all members of the British public paying more for their insurance. We, at the end of the day, are covering in our premiums the cost of fraud that's been committed.
The owners of the accident management company were also arrested, and along with the 2 suspects arrested in the IFED raids, are all now on bail. If charged with conspiracy to defraud and found guilty, all 4 could be facing 10 years in prison. Insurance fraud in the UK is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds a year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even fake deaths. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems, sophisticated data analysis techniques.
This is connected to a bank account and a second mobile phone number.
And a newly formed dedicated police unit.
Police, get back!
They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers, cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act, and claimed and shamed. Today, the police insurance fraud team, IFED, is hunting down suspects.
He needs to phone, because otherwise we'll come back and we will keep coming back until we get him, OK? Because this is quite serious, it's not going to go away.
A would-be con man comes a cropper.
There's no way that it could have happened as it was described.
And a claimer is shamed in the gym.
There was no form of dysfunction visible in any way, shape or form.
This is Milton Keynes, home to Michael Richards. 8 years ago, Michael was a passenger in a serious car crash. The vehicle smashed into a wall, killing the driver, but Michael pulled through. Unfortunately, the driver didn't have insurance, so Michael's case was passed on to the MIB, Motor Insurers Bureau, an organisation set up and funded by the insurance industry.
The MIB is there to compensate innocent victims of uninsured and untraced drivers. And that means a whole variety of injuries. It could be a minor injury, it could be a catastrophic injury. We're there to help those people to provide a fund from which they can claim compensation.
Details of the crash and Michael's medical treatment were passed to the MIB.
Michael Richards said that he had a head injury as well as other injuries, and he presented in a way suggesting that he had such a bad brain injury he was virtually mute. He was saying he needed care, he was saying he needed a lot of help, he was saying he could hardly speak, and that he needed lots of help and assistance to carry on his normal life. He made a claim to the MIB because the driver wasn't insured, and that was his only route potentially to compensation.
what's called a schedule of loss, which is essentially a shopping list type claim that's presented to us by his lawyers, totaled some £2.35 million.
The severity of the head injury that Michael was claiming for meant that the MIB was dealing with a huge payout for care and assistance. So it was natural for them to look closely at the case and order medical examinations.
When he saw one of our experts, he uttered 15 words in an 80-minute interview. He said that he was seriously impaired by his injuries.
But as the MIB continued its investigations, they noticed some strange inconsistencies.
Subsequently, we obtained his police records. Now, this showed, subsequent to the accident in the car, he was arrested for another offence. And when we obtained the PACE interview notes, it was quite clear that he was talking perfectly normally to the police officers, and also, it was also clear that he'd been giving us a false address.
The MIB was by now so suspicious that it called in expert investigators specialising in covert filming.
We live in a surveillance society. Effectively, fraudsters are aware that they might be placed under surveillance. And to that end, we have to stay one step ahead of the game. And the equipment that we have to use has to be cutting edge. It's as simple as that.
Using all its expertise to stay hidden, the surveillance team went deep undercover to find out what was really going on.
What we did discover when we eventually turned up and undertook the surveillance on him was that he was visiting a gym. Filming in a gym is obviously going to be quite a difficult scenario for the operatives to find themselves in. They're likely to be in sportswear. There's not a lot of room to hide a camera in a pair of shorts or a sports vest.
But they overcame these challenges and were able to film Michael without being detected. What they discovered was jaw-dropping. He was talking and bantering with other gym users.
There was no form of dysfunction visible in any way, shape or form. He was a man that was just going about his normal routine or daily life and wasn't hampered in any way, shape or form by the purported injury that he'd sustained.
It was solid evidence of lying and fraud.
We presented this evidence to Mr. Richards via his lawyers, who promptly withdrew his claim.
But the MIB wasn't prepared to let the case drop. It wanted to see Michael's attempt to defraud them punished.
We took the case to court. The judge accepted that he had tried to mislead the court. He was guilty of contempt of court, and consequently, Mr. Richards received a prison sentence.
Michael was sentenced to 4 months in prison for falsely claiming £2.35 million.
For us, it felt excellent that someone who was claiming a 7-figure sum, their case was pushed all the way through into the criminal court. It felt as if that person had received their just desserts.
One of the largest ever insurance fraud rings is busted.
In that 18 months, they could have made £3.2 million.
And a swindling claimer is shamed for life.
What this shows you is that it's not okay to do that. And do you realise what impact that will have on your friends and your family if you get caught?
Please get back!
Insurance fraud is on the rise. Hunting and punishing the criminals responsible is an elite police squad called the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, IFED.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department was set up earlier this year with the sole intention of combating the rise in insurance fraud. We are a dedicated unit that works exclusively tackling that problem.
A growing number of fraudsters are prepared to lie and cheat their way to money they don't deserve. But they better watch their backs, because IFED is on the case.
Since our go-live date early this year, we've effected over 120 arrests in the first 6 months, and we are continuing to work up and down the country, bringing these offenders to justice.
IFED is determined to win the fight against fraudsters.
We're out to stop them in their tracks. There's every chance that an IFED detective may come knocking on their door to arrest them for committing an insurance fraud.
Yeah, we're looking to go to 2 addresses today to arrest 2 suspects who we believe have conspired together to plan a crash between a coach and a car, purely for the purposes of submitting fake personal injury whiplash claims. The evidence that we'll be looking at today, we'll be looking to find any documentation in relation to any of those insurance claims.
any vehicle documentation of the vehicle that was involved in the collision with the coach, and also one very important thing is mobile phones, because we believe there has been some sort of mobile phone contact both before and immediately after the crash between individuals on the coach and the main person who we know has planned this particular fraud.
IFED believes that the two suspects hoped to make money by falsely claiming for whiplash injuries sustained in the fake crash. If the claim had paid out, with numerous personal injury claims and damage to vehicles, they were set to make over £100,000. IFED needs to find their first suspect, and they also need to find evidence that links him to the car and the coach passengers. They begin their search for the suspect at his mum's house.
Police?
Oh, City Police. Who's here? Just yourself? Yeah. Where's his flat?
The first suspect's mum claims that she doesn't know where his flat is.
She's saying that he lives in his own flat, moved out 4 months ago. She doesn't know the door number, doesn't know the flat name or anything else. So she says she's got no contact number for her own son, everything else. So she's clearly lying to us, clearly obstructing us. Probably so that she can put a phone call in as soon as we've gone and sort of tip them off, really, that we're on our way.
She tells them to try his ex-partner's place, but says she doesn't know the exact address of that either.
Right, what is the front door? What colour's the front door? Let's start easy then. I do think you're lying to me, and the patient is wearing a bit thin. How do you get contact? So he doesn't phone you. Do you have a mobile? You don't have a mobile. He needs to phone, because otherwise we'll come back, and we will keep coming back until we get him, OK? Because this is quite serious. It's not going to go away.
Using the rough information she's given them, their next stop is the house of the first suspect's ex-partner.
Police. Is he in?
No, he doesn't live here with me.
Do you know his address?
No.
All right, OK.
The ex-partner has no idea where he is, and the hunt is beginning to feel like a wild goose chase. Their investigations have given them one last address to try.
He's opening up, he's opening up.
They arrive at the block of flats and quickly establish which apartment the suspects are in.
That's where they are?
Yeah.
Are they in?
I think so, I'm not sure.
Finally, it seems like they're getting closer.
Hello, mate.
Not here, mate.
He's not here. Does he live here?
Lives downstairs.
What number?
I don't know.
Yet again, the first suspect seems to have eluded them, but suddenly they get a lead about the second suspect.
Do you just live here on your own, do you?
No, I live with my son.
What's his name?
When the man reveals the name of his son, they realise they've found the second suspect. Then he backtracks and confirms the first suspect is there too.
Easy. Right, where are they?
Just hang on.
What? No, not hanging on. Hello, word with you, mate. Can you come in the front room?
But when they enter the premises, it's clear he's hiding from them.
Is he in there?
It doesn't take long to flush him out, though.
Yeah? All right. So don't give me no more all right?
Right, mate. Have a seat.
Right, you're being arrested for conspiracy to defraud, OK?
Although both suspects are under arrest, it's still far from being a watertight case. It's vital that the team find documentary evidence of the suspected fraud, or the charges won't stand up, and the whole case will be dropped.
What I don't want to do, mate, is turn this upside down and shake it, yeah? Which I will do if I have to. But if you give us what I'm asking to, there's no need for me to do that.
The enhanced security features on top-of-the-range cars means that thieves are losing out, and fraudsters are being stopped in their tracks too. Head teacher Alan Bromley drove a car that befitted his status, a BMW 3 Series. But if he'd gone for a more down-market car, he might have got away with his scam. One night, he drove to a carol service and parked nearby, keeping the keys in his possession the whole time. Afterwards, he got a lift home because he'd had a few drinks. A short time later, his car was found ablaze 6 miles away. Alan contacted his insurers to say his car had been stolen and set on fire. But right from the start, things didn't add up. Ursula Coulibaly is head of financial crime and worked on the Alan Bromley claim.
We first suspected that there may be something wrong with Alan Bromley's claim when he phoned through to our fire and theft teams. Some of the reports that we had from the police and the fire brigade, some of the information that was in there again contradicted the story that Mr Bromley gave us when he initially made his claim.
The insurers were particularly concerned about the timings Alan had given them.
Independent engineer's report that we asked for, again as part of the investigation, specifically set out if the car was stolen without keys, what tools they'd need to have to steal the car, and more importantly how long it would take. With the timings that Mr Bromley gave us and at the time that the fire brigade attended, there's no way that it could have happened as it was described.
Alarm bells were ringing, and the insurers asked a company specialising in vehicle examination to look at what was left of the car. Phil Hoyes is the engineer who performed the inspection.
When I found the vehicle, it had sustained quite heavy fire damage. The condition of the car was approaching a complete burnout.
Even so, he was still able to carry out a thorough assessment.
My remit was really quite straightforward for examining the car. It was to determine whether there were any signs of forced entry. When I got to examining the locking system and the doors, there was no sign of forced damage to the locking systems or around the door hinges or the door frames themselves or the door mechanisms.
So, if the doors hadn't been forced, then the only way into the car for a thief would have been the windows. But there was a problem there too.
A close examination inside the doors found the glass from the windows that had melted inside the doors, showing that the windows weren't smashed. If the windows had been smashed and forced entry had been gained that way, then you'd find the fragments of the glass inside the vehicle and it had melted in that position.
He hadn't lost the keys, there was no forced entry, and the windows hadn't been smashed. So how could the car have been stolen? Alan Bromley's story was going up in smoke, but he wasn't going to budge.
Despite the information and the evidence that we'd managed to gain from our investigations, Mr Bromley's been adamant throughout that he's not acted in a fraudulent manner.
There was one more piece of evidence for the insurers to analyse, and it proved to be the most important. The key to what really happened was just that, the car key. It contains a microchip, which records detailed information about the car that can be analysed later.
It does give us information such as what the mileage was at the last time it was driven and also the last time it was used. When we did the keys analysis report, it contradicted Alan Bromley's case. What it told us actually was the car had been used after that he told us he'd used it last. And in addition to that, it was just shortly before the fire brigade were called.
They now had all the evidence. The only thing missing was a motive. But luckily, the keys analysis report, together with evidence from the financial contract for the car, gave them the information they needed.
Within that contract, there was terms around how much mileage he could do per year. Once again, from the keys report, that helped us to determine that actually Mr Bromley had gone way over his mileage allowance. In the event he either gave his car back, he would either have to pay the entire financial agreement in full, or he'd have to pay the excess for the additional mileage, which was significant. We believe that was the financial motive for what happened.
With evidence and a motive, the insurers informed Mr Bromley that they wouldn't be paying his claim. At that point, the police moved in to arrest him. But even then, Alan Bromley stuck to his version of events.
Mr Bromley has always denied that the claim that he submitted was fraudulent throughout our investigation process and once it went to court.
Alan Bromley was prosecuted for false representation, and he was given a 12-week suspended sentence. Although he stood to lose a lot of money on the vehicle contract, the cost to Alan Bromley's reputation and career is arguably greater. He's currently banned from teaching.
In Mr Bromley's case, he was upstanding in the community, he was a head teacher, well thought of, and what this shows you is that it's not okay to do that. And do you realise what impact that will have on your friends and your family if you get caught? If you're ever thinking about doing something like this, think again. The insurers are a lot better at detecting fraud, and now we've got the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, and they will take action, and don't let it be you that they come to next.
While some fraudsters exaggerate claims for genuine car accidents,
And the infectious brake, yeah.
others demand compensation for collisions that never even happened. These so-called accidents are known as staged crashes and can generate a lot of money. This makes them an attractive prospect for criminal gangs. As far back as 2006, Longmeadow Farm near Luton was on the police radar as a possible setting for organised criminal activity. At the time, the police had no actual evidence of any wrongdoing, so they decided to set up a surveillance team to find out more. Detective Constable Mick Keneally, who has since retired, was part of the operation.
The purpose of doing the observations was to establish what criminality the group of people at Longmeadow Farm were involved in, if any.
And it wasn't long before the police surveillance at the farm began to bear fruit. When this blue Astra arrives at Longmeadow, it looks to be in pretty good nick. But without ever leaving the farm, 24 hours later, it's so smashed up that it's become a complete write-off. It's clear evidence of a car being deliberately damaged.
There were vehicles obviously clearly that were being damaged at Longmeadow Farm, so that gave us the view that they were involved in criminal activity involved around stage-induced, exaggerated accident claims.
Staged accidents were just the start. There were more revelations to come when the police expanded their investigations.
We made contact with the insurers and established that some of the vehicles on the farm were also subject of accident claims. And from that, we were able to establish who the accident management company were that were involved in that. And that came down to a company called Swift Accident Management. It was only when we looked at who was managing all those accidents. It turns out they were in business with the people from Longmeadow Farm.
Accident management companies exist solely to manage and process claims from people involved in accidents. The link between the people who were damaging cars at Longmeadow Farm and the people who operated Swift Accident Management immediately aroused suspicion and pointed towards Swift operating fraudulently.
There are genuine accident management companies, but there are a lot of accident management companies who are either completely fraudulent or do some fraud in that they exaggerate claims, they add ghost passengers to claims, so they make money fraudulently.
Ghost passengers is a term for when an accident management company adds fictitious passengers to a genuine accident in order to bump up the amount of personal injury being claimed. It was a technique that Swift used to cheat more money out of insurers, but the fraudulent behaviour didn't stop there.
At the same office where they were, in Leagrave Road, there was a taxi firm called Kim's Fleet Cars. The manager of Kim's Fleet Cars was the brother of the manager of Swift Accident Management. So they had a number of drivers there and a number of cars that they used in fraudulent claims. So they created their own business, and they do that by staging accidents where an accident's never happened. They're completely fictitious, so that any money that's made goes directly to the accident management company, and it's a way of making a lot of money from a single claim.
There was now enough evidence to convince the police they had uncovered a huge web of criminal activity. Between them, the criminals at Swift and Longmeadow Farm were creating staged accidents on an industrial scale.
Swift Accident Management themselves were in business between August 2005 and November 2006. So in effect, they were in business for about 18 months. In the 18 months, they dealt with 180 accident claims, and out of those, there were 230 individual claims. So the extra 50 were for personal injury claims. So it was a lot in that period of time, and of course, that generates a huge amount of money.
It looks like the level of criminality didn't stop there. It seems one of the gang members was also engaged in a more basic form of theft, stealing CDs from the wrecked cars. In terms of claims already paid out and claims submitted, Swift stood to cheat the insurers out of a mind-blowing amount of money.
If you looked at what Swift could have made in that 18 months, they could have made £3.2 million.
The police operation ensured the gang operating Swift and Longmeadow Farm didn't get away with it. Once they had evidence of cars being deliberately damaged, the police moved in. The sheer scale of the criminal operation meant that 750 people gave statements, 60 people were arrested, and 36 vehicles were seized. The hearings alone lasted 3 years, and 37 people were convicted.
Police? Oh, City Police.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, IFED, is on the hunt for suspects it believes are linked to an alleged crash for cash scam. After being given the runaround, IFED eventually tracks down the man they believe to be the ringleader to a flat belonging to the other suspects on their list. The IFED team cracks on with their search for evidence.
Is that them all? What I don't want to do, mate, is turn this upside down and shake it, yeah? Which I will do if I have to. But if you give us what I'm asking to, there's no need for me to do that. All right, mate.
What they're looking for is proof of the link between the two men and the accident with the coach and the car.
Mark, found two mobile phones that we're interested in. We found some documentation. I believe it links into the offence that we are investigating. We've also found a number of bank cards, which I want to compare to certain elements of the offence.
But that's just the start. As the IFED team searches the flat, they turn up signs of a separate offence.
He's got a big box of movie football kits.
So they're basically just, what, like Everton?
All different ones.
So they're all counterfeit gear, basically, then, yeah? Huh? Yeah. Right. Bag it all up.
Does it work? How old is it?
They decide to get the suspects taken away to a local police station, but the search for evidence continues.
Police, hello?
DS Mark Forster leads the search in the first suspect's flat.
This is how we found it when we've come into the bedroom. There's a box that may have been taken off the wardrobe or some other place. There's a bag here which is empty, so I can only presume that all of this documentation was in this bag. So at some time shortly before we've arrived and arrested him this morning, he's obviously had a quick rummage through this, maybe in an attempt to try and get rid of evidence, basically, that might be key to our investigation. He's obviously been tipped off the fact that we were looking for him because obviously we've been to his mother's address, we've been to his ex-partner's address. We know that when we've arrested him upstairs, his mobile phone sat on the table, ringing with his mum, trying to get in touch with him. She told us that she didn't know where he lived, didn't know his address, didn't have a contact telephone number for him or any way of getting in touch with him. So I'll be going back and having a word with Mum later on today, I think.
After sifting through the paperwork, Mark finds the evidence he's looking for, a link between the suspect and the vehicle.
We found a driving licence belonging to the driver of the car. That hit the coach up the rear. We found insurance documentation relating to the insurance of that vehicle, MOT certificates, a current MOT certificate for that vehicle, and various other scraps of paper with lists of names which we believe may be those people that were on the coach at the time of the accident who have subsequently put in personal injury claims. So it's nice because it links the gentleman who lives here to both parties, those on the coach and the driver of the car. And it's fantastic evidence for us, and certainly more than we thought we'd find.
Does it work?
Both suspects are currently on bail. If charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and found guilty, they could get a jail term of up to 10 years. In the first 6 months of operation, IFED has already busted 80 suspected fraudsters. This pair aren't the first, and they certainly won't be the last to get a knock on the door from the elite police squad.